Patrice Hancock from Akron, Ohio, here in the States. I'm the host of Chenelle's Language Learning Journey podcast at Anchor.fm. I am a polyglot, a TEFL instructor, a language influencer, a motivator, a podcaster. I studied theater at Kent State University. I studied film at the Los Angeles Film School. And I got my TEFL certification from bridge.edu to teach business English and English from young learners. And I am here to tell my language learning story about how I learn languages by ear. No other method except immersion. Well, I would say it had to start when I was 23. I went to Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland, Ohio, where I was born and raised. And I took my first Spanish course. Now, I knew some Spanish prior to that, just from listening to Sesame Street and learning my, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And those were all the numbers I knew. But I love listening to Ricky Martin, Shakira, Santana, Enrique Iglesias. I love eating the food. I love dancing, the salsa, the merengue. It would have been natural for me to be enthusiastic about learning Spanish, but I was more enthusiastic about wanting to learn Italian, French, and Russian. But on the east side of town, they didn't have Italian, French, and Russian from 1010 to 2020 courses. So you either had to go down to downtown campus to get those courses, or you had to go to the west side, which might have taken 2 buses just to get from where I lived at in Bedford, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cleveland, all the way to the west side. And they only had 2 semesters of Russian, so I said, I'll do the Spanish. I had a textbook, I had some CDs, I listened to Telemundo, I listened to Univision. I had no one to talk to. I didn't even think about talking to myself at this time in my language learning journey. All I knew was I needed to get good grades because I wanted to go to a good school, and Spanish was going to be the ticket. It was also going to be the ticket for me not to have to take math either, which was great. I spent about 12 and a half hours a week, 2.5 hours of class time, and an additional 2 hours after that in the learning center with tutors learning Spanish all by ear. They would read each chapter. We would work on the lessons. I would give them the answers. They would write them down in the booklet for me. I would turn it in. And the teacher would give me my test auditorily because they knew I couldn't read the page. I didn't have braille at my disposal because I was still a large print user. But because my vision was declining in regards to reading, I just did audio. And I took no notes. I remembered yo and tú and él and ella and ustedes and nosotros and vosotros and ellos and ellas. And then I just learned all the endings, estar and ser, and how they all correlate. And I was able to correct my own classmates' grammar mistakes because I picked up the grammar very easily. But once again, they were still clueless on how I was learning all this with not taking any notes whatsoever. And it just made more sense for me to be able to focus on learning by ear. And I picked up a lot of Spanish because I listened to a lot of Christina Aguilera and Ricky Martin constantly in my friend's car. And, this is when you still had compact disc and CD players. And, I don't even think I listened to the CDs that came along with the Como Se Dice book, to be honest with you. But my speaking was atrocious. But my comprehension level and me translating Spanish from Spanish to English and back was superb because it was nothing but immersion. for me, and I found that that worked. So sometime later, after moving to California to go to film school, I tried to speak it, and it had dismal results. And all I would get is, you need to speak more. You need to practice more. Well, if you don't live around somebody that speaks Spanish 24 hours a day and doesn't mind that you're broken Spanish, then you're going to suffer. So I would say about 2014, I enrolled at the Hadley School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and I just decided I want to work on my vocabulary, and I finished both of those in 2 months. And what wound up transpiring was that I had a braille book, so I would read the book, I would listen to the audio recording, I would call in, I would take my test in Spanish over the phone, and I would get a grade emailed to me. Well, the professor was so impressed by me knocking out the course in 9 weeks, both courses, that she just encouraged me to keep going. So I never studied a language by myself before. It was all academic. And so I said, I want to learn Russian. I have always wanted to learn Russian. So I went and I found a podcast called Russian Made Easy by Mark Thompson. It was 30 lessons long, and I just started absorbing it naturally. And I just listened and repeated and started speaking. And I got excited because I finished the whole entire 30 lesson podcast in like a week and a half. And then I went online on YouTube, and as I was cleaning my room, I decided, oh wait, there's someone called Michelle Thomas. So there was a Russian course by Natasha Bershatsky, and I started listening to all the audio they had. And as I'm cleaning my house, my bedroom in particular, I'm starting to absorb all this naturally without any type of drills or anything. And I started visualizing all the verb tenses, everything. And I started speaking. And then I said, well, wait a minute, if I'm doing this well, maybe I should start recording myself. So I just flipped on my phone, and because I use voiceover on my iPhone, I recorded a video like I'm doing now for you guys, and I just started speaking and just introducing myself. And then I posted it on Facebook, and then people started looking at it, and I joined some groups, the Polyglot group, and then I joined the My Polyglot group, and then I joined Ollie's group, and then I joined this group and that group, and I just started following all these people because I didn't know what the polyglot community was, what a polyglot was. All I knew was I just wanted to speak Russian and be understood. And I just kept going on walks, listening to plenty of Michelle Thomas. I started using the Memrise app once I found out it was accessible with voiceover. And I just started going through each course, and I went and did levels 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. I skipped 3. And then I just started listening for like a whole year. Nothing but Russia Today channel and President Putin's press conferences, and a lot of Radio Roka. I listened to a little bit of Radio Svoboda. I listened to Russian Progress. I listened to SBS Radio Russian, Coffee Break Russian. I did a lot of Andrea Zajemcev's movies, Elena, Loveless, and Leviathan in Russian. And then, I started cooking Russian recipes like borscht and Olivier salad in order to enhance my Russian, food palette, because I love to cook. And I even did online Skype chats and Facebook Instant Messenger with friends of mine from different parts of Russia. While helping them with their English, they were helping me with my Russian. I even met a Russian boyfriend in order to, communicate. I mean, we just had basic communication, about things that we did. And it gave me a lot more speaking practice. And I spent a whole year doing nothing but speaking. And then I did nothing but listen from 6 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week, which equivocated to 5,544 hours worth of listening time. I got to the point where I was talking to my ex-boyfriend's mother, who speaks nothing but Russian and German, and Russian, no headaches whatsoever. And it wasn't until 2018, like October 2018, I was listening to the audio version of By Naughty Man by Leo Tolstoy. And I could understand about 90% of it. So it was a credit to the fact that I never gave up, even though it was difficult to find a lot of materials. But I was able to find materials that were in audio format. I did finally get the Harry Potter in audio, and I also got the Harry Potter digital, and I downloaded the Russian voice from Accessibility, and I downloaded the Russian keyboard. Now, mind you, I mostly focus on listening comprehension, pronunciation, and speaking, because I don't have time to sit there and write an email or a text message to someone in Russian. I can't read that visually, so I have voiceover read me what they say in Russian using voiceover in the Russian voice, but I do not do a lot of writing. Um, I just, it's not counterproductive for me. I want to be able to be understood, and I want for people to be able to understand me. And so that's why when I'm working with my students, I'm able to have communications with them in their own language. If I can't explain it correctly in English, I'll explain it in their own language so they can understand what I'm saying, depending on if it's a grammar point or a phrase or a particular word or whatever it may be. My whole thing is, if you want to learn something bad enough, you will. You just have to put the time and the effort into it. I had technology issues where my keyboard wouldn't work because it was broken. I didn't have braille at my disposal. I don't know braille in every language. Now, evidently, yes, I can read in Russian braille. I can read in Dutch braille or French, Italian, and Spanish because I know the alphabets in those languages, and I know how to read in Swedish braille. But for the rest of the languages I dabble in, I don't read the braille code. I don't even learn it because everything's audio, or I will go to settings on my iPhone 11 Pro, or I will go to settings on my iPad Pro, go to accessibility, go to voiceover, go to speech, download the language I want, go to braille, download the braille table, which is a file that you would use in order to be able to read the text in that language. And it's all 100% free, by the way, through Apple. And if you have a braille display, then you're able to hook it up via Bluetooth and have the words come out on the display, and you'll be able to read them in that particular language, as long as they're written in that language. They can't be translated from Google Translate to that language. They have to be written in that language. So in order for it to be, recognized. And braille displays are anywhere in between $600 to $10,000. It's not something that you just get automatically. You either have to be working or going to school or have a real need for it. Personally, I think they should just be given to people who need them because of the fact that, that's a form of reading and writing and literacy, and not everybody can read print. And just because I have some readable vision doesn't mean that I can still read print. I cannot. I cannot read small print, which is 12 font. So I see the bigger picture, not the smaller picture out of one eye. So I can see people and things and buildings, and I can tell you what the clouds and the sun and the moon looks like. But if you ask me what Halley's Comet looked like, or what the Milky Way or the constellation Leo or a star looked like, I couldn't tell you that. It's too small. So I usually have voiceover read me the subtitles when I'm watching a movie, and I use my Apple remote in order to be able to navigate through using gestures and rotating either 90 degrees or 45 degrees with my index finger and my ring finger. And, that's how I navigate and have stuff read to me. I can see the apps on the screen, but I can't read them. And so, I'm still able to watch TV and tell you what's going on, but I just can't see the small details. So that's why I use a lot of audio and less braille. I did no large print up until I was about 32, and the last time I used a magnifier was 36. And so, I mostly focus on the audio because that's more important to me. I do get ebooks, and as a result of that, I'm able to have voiceover read me the books in whatever language, as long as there's a braille table for it, I will be able to read it, and as long as it's written in that particular language, I will be able to read it, as long as I also knew the alphabet as well. So, but at the end of the day, I mostly concentrate on speaking, and because of that, and my fondness for podcasts, I decided in 2018 to create my own podcast called Chenelle's Language Learning Journey Podcast, where I talk about my language learning journey. I talk about the difficulties of finding materials in an accessible format, and that it can't always be in PDF because screen readers don't work with PDFs very well unless you have, an iPhone or something comparable to it, to where, you can download the Braille table file in that language, you can download the voice, you can download the digital keyboard in that language. Then you'll be able to read, an ebook or whatever in that format. Otherwise, you won't be able to. VoiceOver just won't do it without taking these steps in order to be able to read a book. And unfortunately, not everyone can afford a $3,000 Braille display. So, a lot of times you have to, improvise. And I never used, any type of editing software. I just record it and see what happens. And, right now I have 14.4K listeners in 112 countries. And it's been 2.5 years, and I'm just very blessed that I can share my experience with people, because I really enjoy learning languages, and right now I'm learning Arabic, and I'm improving my French, Dutch, and Italian. I did dabble in some Finnish, Icelandic, Swedish, Greek, Turkish, Cantonese, Japanese, Korean, Irish, Swahili, Hindi, and Norwegian. I even dabbled a little bit in Danish, but I got bored after 2 days. But honestly, I love the languages of the East. And so I'm going to be concentrating on my Thai, my Turkish, my Japanese, my Cantonese, a little bit of Hindi, Swahili, and Arabic. And then if I come back to the West, Icelandic and Finnish will be the two that I will concentrate on, and then I will keep going with Italian and French. Those are the languages I love the most, and I love speaking and cooking food, and I even teach myself how to cook food by, learning the vocabulary, going on YouTube and listening to the different people. I go on Facebook groups, and I join Facebook groups dealing with the particular language that I'm learning. This way I'm able to throw up a video, introduce myself in the target language, and I explain to the admins that I cannot read the stuff that's on the site unless it's, but yeah. Otherwise, they're very accommodating. But otherwise, I really enjoy the experience of podcasting. I've interviewed so many people. I've made so many friends. And, I'm just very blessed to be able to speak about my journey and how I do things. I might do it by ear. It might take me some time. I might have to go through a Michelle Thomas course multiple times. if I don't pick up everything the first time around, which I don't mind. I might have to go through and memorize. I might have to use Mango, to compare what I've known from the other courses. And I might even have to throw it up there and speak it in order for people to give me feedback. But I don't mind doing that. I get to learn about someone's culture. I get to learn about someone's way of thinking, how they cook things. You know, I go as far as to learn about the laws of the country, just in case I ever traveled there. I learn about, how they treat their disabled people. I learn about the food and how that's cooked, the social norms and how you're supposed to deal with people who are older, people who are younger than you, people who, you know, are, you know, if it's a man, how you address a man, if it's a woman, how you address a woman, so forth and so on, because every language is different, especially in Arabic. If I go over to another country, I want to know what type of attire I need to bring. I literally immerse myself 100% in learning about all aspects of the culture and the people while I'm learning the language. I just don't learn the language just because I want to speak it or be understood. I want to be able to understand where they're coming from, because I understand not everyone's English is 100% native, and I don't expect it to be. My students that I help with their English speaking and comprehension and pronunciation, you know, skills, you know, they love speaking with me because I give them the confidence to be able to keep going. So you make mistakes. I encourage making mistakes. That's important. I make plenty of mistakes. I don't mind. And another thing I do not do, I don't compare myself to other people. I learn the languages to whatever level. If it's A1 that I just want to speak it, or A2, that's fine. If it's a B2 level, then I'll put more time into it. Now that things are becoming more accessible, I can go find the books that I want. Before I couldn't, because they weren't available. The technology wasn't available. I did have people bully me. I did have people make fun of me because I used dictation and it didn't always work. Because, technology is not 100% workable in its own way. When you are used to using what little vision you have and you no longer have the opportunity to do so because you can no longer read anymore, you have to adapt and use other methods that will be comfortable to your learning style. And my learning style's changed over the years. I used to be visual, audio, and tactile. Now I'm audio and tactile. And I really enjoy it. Like right now, I'm learning so much about MSA and Egyptian Arabic and Levantine Arabic and Jordanian Arabic and Syrian Arabic. And I'm going out and I'm speaking the language with people, whether it's ordering some food, which I did last weekend. And I also ordered some food in Thai last year and was invited to a Thai Buddhist temple to practice my Thai. And it was not that much Thai I was speaking. I went and I was in line last week, or should I say even a couple of days ago, and I heard someone speaking Spanish. And, because here in the U.S. we have 356 languages spoken other than English and Spanish. And it is kind of difficult to be able to speak Spanish or Mandarin or Arabic or Russian in this country without being persecuted. And I really don't care. I will speak whatever language I want to that makes me feel comfortable. And I think they were surprised. One said that they don't speak Spanish. The other one said a little bit. It might have been Portuguese. I think it was more Portuguese than anything. But, I spoke Spanish to them and with great ease. And I didn't mind it. And I said, well, this is kind of cool that there's somebody else speaking another language in this store other than English. I love it. So I don't mind throwing myself in the deep end and going and speaking. Someone in a cafe once, I was waiting for a meeting to start, and they were a Russian teacher, and they said they spoke Russian. I turned around and introduced myself in Russian, and they were blown away, along with the whole room. So, if I can do it, and all I do is listen, constantly the material that interests me, and I always advise this to my students and my listeners. Find things that interest you. So I like to mimic the stuff that I do in my own life. So if I go grocery shopping, I'm going to go to a Middle Eastern store and order some stuff and purchase some stuff in Arabic, or at least attempt to. I'm going to go to a Mandarin store and attempt to order something in Mandarin. Or I'm going to go to a restaurant and speak some Cantonese, like when I did 6 weeks of Cantonese using Mango. And I got through the whole A1 course in 6 weeks, and I was so proud of myself. And my whole goal was to be able to pick up the phone and order some Chinese food in Cantonese. I did that, but they didn't have barbecue beef bun, so I wound up getting sesame chicken instead. And the person spoke Mandarin and understood what I said and was completely blown away by it. So, my whole goal is to be able to use my languages in my everyday life. I don't worry about the grammar. I don't worry about messing it up. I just do it, because if you don't, you'll never do it. I'm not someone that doesn't procrastinate. I do procrastinate, from time to time. Who doesn't? But for me personally, I enjoy the idea of being able to speak something, say, Mina, Alan, Chenelle, or, talk to bra, you know, um, you know, ja je vu, stis na Akron, Ohio, stis Sesha, donde, говорю по-русски язык и итальянский язык и голландский язык и французский язык и арабский язык чуть-чуть. Моя друзьями. You know, на русском языком это замечательный язык учить и слушать и читать и смотреть другой фильмы по-русски язык все время друзьями. Evidently, languages are my life. Podcasting is my life. Helping people learn languages is my life. And I never thought that I would ever be able to do this and meet the people that I've met so far and make friends and even have a boyfriend. I mean, it's an amazing thing when you can connect with someone with another language, something that you've never learned, but you taught yourself to learn. Whether it's a phrase, whether it's several phrases, whether it's a few words, those are phrases and words that you didn't know before you started. And to be honest, I'm quite honored to be able to speak here today at this year's very first Polyglot Conference global online event. And, I believe each one teach one. Language learning is a journey, not a race. Enjoy the process of learning. Whether you're learning how to cook a meal, whether you're learning cultural facts, political facts, religious facts, whether you're learning for a test, or you're getting married and you're moving to the country, I would love to go to Russia and just completely speak nothing but Russian 24 hours a day. I did it in my house. I did it on the internet. And if I can do it with very little resources, then anybody can do it. If there's a will, there's a way. And if you believe that language learning is for you, don't hesitate. Just do it. Go to your library. You can get free resources. There are plenty of free resources out there. I would have never thought that my podcast would have taken off as quickly as it did. But it did. I would have never thought anyone took me seriously being visually impaired and learning through immersion only. But they did. And I'm very happy about that. No wholesome set gone, nege, hi, Neto, Maikwa Laika, Noki Pomyao, Ongai Sai, Noki Pomyao, Neto, Hi, Polyglot Conference Global Online Event Laika. Bye bye. Isme Chenelle Han, Bay America. Shukran Afan Sabirti, Me Salame. Spasibo Basayasan. Za Slushali, Umanya, Sidvonia, Maya Druzami. Paka paka.